they think they're great at debating, but all I see them do is use dishonesty and gaslighting. Intellectually, I don't respect them like at all.
Her and Andrew were both nice. Did you debate her?
Not yet.
Okay.
But I think she's a fucking bitch.
Come on, tell us how you really feel.
YouAreMopped. Who fucking names their channel that?
What's up, everyone? The clip you're about to watch is from my recent conversation with Max, formerly of the Matters Now podcast and now co-host of the new channel, Yerba Mate Talks. If you enjoy this video and want more like it, including the rest of my conversation with Max, hit that like button and subscribe, because there's more coming soon.
You want to talk about Andrew and Rachel.
You mentioned you were supposed to be debating her on feminism, and then
Yes.
Andrew on is Trump a racist. Those two were at DebateCon 5 with me and FTFE and Mike. And I didn't know who Rachel was. I didn't know who Andrew Wilson was.
Wait, say that again?
Wow, lucky you.
So I debated Andrew in a round robin thing. Rachel ended up participating too, so I think I got a couple rounds against her on random topics that they picked. Saturday night we were all hanging out at the lounge and all that, and those two, again, who I didn't know yet, just came and sat across from us and introduced themselves, and she said she was an author, and I interview authors on this channel, and I ordered her book right in front of her, The Occult Feminism, and I asked her, I said, hey, this looks interesting. If I read your book, would you mind coming on my channel to talk about it? And she said, yeah. And so I read her book when I got back. I'm yet to interview her, but I still would like to.
How derpy is that book?
Well, I'm not going to call it derpy. Obviously, you haven't read it since you're asking me, right? Did you debate her?
Not yet.
Okay.
But I think she's a fucking bitch.
Come on, tell us how you really feel.
She was, her and Andrew were both nice.
Yeah, but I make a distinction in being nice, because I am nice. I'm not a like a cunt, but I think that she might be personally nice if she has you in front, but some of the stuff that they say, some of the stuff that they believe is absolutely abhorrent. Andrew, like I have some heavy disagreements. Like Andrew thinks he's like great at debating. Same with Jim Bob, that group, they think they're great at debating. But all I see them do is use bitch tactics and dishonesty and just like gaslighting. Intellectually, I don't respect them like at all. That's why I ask you, how derpy is the book? Because I saw her debate about feminism with First Amender, who's my friend on MDD, and some of the stuff, like I wasn't feeling like fact-checking it on the go, on the fly, but I got the impression that she was just inventing history and that kind of stuff. That's why I think it's maybe a derpy book.
So I read the book when I got back, so it was all the way back in February after the DebateCon 5, and I even took a bunch of notes, because I did plan to have a good conversation with her about it. Like, I thought it was fine. Like, it wasn't what I expected. It was a lot about history and wealthy people, and it wasn't a grassroots movement. That was the whole point.
And the other thing that gets me is on DebateCon, when a girl called Megan Marie asked Andrew Wilson a question, Andrew Wilson was like, oh, you're a woman, just go sit down.
Hi, this question is for Andrew.
Okay, well, it's my interpretation. Your interpretation's wrong. Besides that, I don't have to listen to you. You're a woman. I'm kidding. I was kidding. Relax. I'm kidding. Kinda.
And he didn't want to answer because the question was so good that he had no answer for it. So he had to put her down like that. So a woman that would be with a man that considers her inferior is just a sellout, I think, in my opinion. So that's why I think she's a fucking bitch.
Wait, a woman that would be with a man?
Andrew Wilson considers women inferior to men.
Oh, yes. I think she actually believes that too.
Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
I say what I say.
Does he really believe that, or is that part of his persona?
I don't think he's a grifter. I think he truly believes that. I don't think he's dumb. I don't think he's super smart either. That's why he has to use those abhorrent tactics when he debates, like Jimbo and all that group of the ortho bros. Also, I don't like, for example, what they do with the whatever podcast that they go and they beat up people who beat up on debate.
Oh yeah, they dunk on teenage girls.
Teenage girls and OnlyFans models and people who are not debaters. When I debated Jim Bob, his only recourse was to just repeat himself over and over and over, and I don't deal with repetition too well. So the third time that he asked me the same question that I had already answered, I was just like, yeah, fuck this debate.
Yeah. I think Andrew's technique or his style is just to be a fast talker, smooth talker, to control the topic of conversation. He's the first one to speak when they open the floor.
As soon as James announced the open discussion, before I had a chance to get a word out, Andrew jumped in with his questions. And that meant he kind of owned the debate.
I coach FTFE for that debate, but it takes a while to prepare for that kind of stuff. And he does have down some of the scummy tactics, like when he tells you, no, I'm just using your logic to test your logic. But when he asks you a question, I'm going to give an over-exaggerated example. He will ask you stuff like, okay, now that, given that you have murdered your wife, like what will you have for dinner tonight? So if you answer, you are implicitly accepting the terms of the question, which is that you have murdered your wife. And I try to explain that to Jim Bob. Jim Bob, I can't answer the question because they all do the same shit. I can't answer the question because I'm agreeing to the terms. And you have some baked assumptions into the question, which I just cannot accept. So it's super scummy. I'm all about being like honest and articulating your point with honesty and not using these rhetorical games. And that's all that I see them do. So that's why I don't like them very much.
Oh, his opening statement against FTFE was what a bunch of nonsense. The Humanist Manifesto or whatever. He's just like, oh, therefore you are for murdering babies. You're in favor of enslaving women.
Yeah, that was... I was tearing the little hair that I have. I was tearing it out because like, oh, holy shit. How can someone say that?
He goes on to the next one before you even have a chance to process. What did he just say? What the fuck?
Yeah, very outlandish claims like, oh, we should enslave women and force them to breed. It's like, dude, that goes against humanism. That is enslaving people. It's not humanness. You can't just choose. They focus on the secular part a lot. That's something they also do. Also scummy. They focus on the secular part a lot and they forget the humanist. So it's a two thing. It's a secular humanist. If you're enslaving people or forcing them to breed or doing whatever, then you're not being humanist. If you're going against human rights, then you're not being humanist. And they go like, oh, well, the communists were seculars. They weren't secular humanists.
I was excited to hear you thinking maybe you'd be at DebateCon 6. Is there any real chance of that?
No, I talked with James, and it's a funny story because I talked with him and he was like, I'm looking for bigger creators. But he's like, dude, you're taking FTFE. And him and I share a lot of the same core audience, so it would be a good thing. And I can also get, people to contribute to, I can get my audience to contribute to the GoFundMe, or I can do the GoFundMe on my own. And he was like, yeah, no. He started giving me like lame excuses. He said, first of all, that he wanted bigger creators. Then he said, no, it might be expensive to get you all the way from Africa. It's like, dude, Uruguay is not in Africa. And he was like, oh, yeah, I confused it with Uganda.
I knew he paid for the hotel, but I didn't realize he paid for the travel.
Well, yeah.
I guess that makes sense, yeah, because FTFE came all the way from the UK.
In general, if you do an event, whether it's a debate kind of a thing or, a conference, in a conference you might get paid to go to the conference on top of the travel and lodging. But if you're going to do an event like that, then yeah, at least he doesn't pay for the debate, but at least he covers the expenses of the trip, which is at the bare minimum.
Yeah, I asked him at DebateCon 5 if anyone was getting paid, and he said only Lawrence Krauss.
And that's all I care about.
Right. You have to be like super high profile.
So not this time around?
No, I will continue to campaign maybe for the next one. And we'll see. Now that it's a whole, like, I'm kind of the head of the channel, we can maybe get that done. But yeah, I'll continue to campaign for DebateCon 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, and we'll see. I'll eventually get myself over there.
All right, that's it for this clip. But in addition to Andrew Wilson, Max and I also discussed other topics, including flat earth, religion, and free will, with the latter two conversations coming soon. So if you made it this far, make sure you're subscribed because you won't want to miss what's coming next. In the meantime, check out my other videos on screen now, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.